I discovered 3 terrifying close encounters that will make you question your reality. I never should have opened that door. The moment I did, a chill swept over me like a ghost's breath. It was a typical evening, or so I thought. Just me, my worn-out couch, and the flickering TV. I sank into my usual spot, old popcorn crumbs still lingering in the cracks of the cushions. My heart was steady, my mind at ease. Then came the knock. It wasn't a normal knock. It echoed, sharp and hollow, rattling against the walls of my small apartment. I glanced at the clock. It was late. Too late for anyone to be visiting. Fear prickled at the back of my neck. I shivered, the temperature seemingly dropping with the arrival of the sound. I forced myself to stand, each step toward the door feeling like a trek through thick fog. The hallway outside was cloaked in darkness. I hesitated. Shadows loomed, stretching across the stale carpet. Whispering winds sneaked through the cracks, carrying sounds I could barely discern. I opened the door a crack, just enough to peek out. Nothing. No one. Just the dull hum of the city in the distance. My heart pounded, pounding louder than the background noise. I turned back, ready to return to the safety of my routine. But then I heard it again. A murmur, soft yet urgent. Help me. I froze. My breath hitched. That voice, it was familiar yet twisted. It felt like it was crawling down my spine, wrapping around my chest like a vice. I stepped back, doubt creeping into my mind. Was I losing it? Despite every instinct screaming at me to stay put, I opened the door wider. The cool air hit my face, sending chills racing across my skin. But there was something else now. A flicker of light caught my eye down the hall. A dark figure stood there, just at the edge of the light. It swayed slightly, like a puppet on invisible strings. My heart dropped. Couldn't breathe. I felt a lump in my throat, fear heating my cheeks. The shadows deepened, wrapping around the figure like a shroud. Come closer, it whispered. The voice now clear but twisted with despair. Every muscle in my body screamed to run, but I was paralyzed. The eerie glow illuminated only enough to see its outline. No features, just a silhouette that seemed to pulsate. Just then, the light flickered and died. A deafening silence engulfed me. I could barely hear my own breathing. Then crack. A door slammed shut at the end of the hallway. The sound ricocheted, bringing me back to reality. I rushed to the door. My heart raced, pounding against my ribcage. But before I could step out, I felt it cold air brushing against me. A figure moving behind me. And that when the scream rang out. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The scream echoed through the halls, a shrill, piercing note that sliced through the silence like a knife. It wasn't just a voice. It was a cacophony of despair, an orchestra of terror. Every instinct had me on the verge of fleeing, but that icy grip tightened around my throat, rendered me immobile. Help me, the voice returned, softer now, a haunting melody woven with sorrow. It was almost comforting, but dread twisted in my stomach, telling me to run. The darkness behind me felt alive, as if the shadows had awakened and were reaching out, hungry for my fear. I tore myself away from the door and spun around, heart racing like a trapped animal. There it was again, a shadow flitting just beyond the edge of the dimly lit room, darting between the walls. Panic surged through me, and I stumbled back, my eyes scanning for any sign of the source. But the room seemed to stretch, contorting into a claustrophobic nightmare. Then, from the depths of darkness, a face emerged. Pale skin, hollow cheeks, and sunken eyes that felt like black holes threatening to suck away my very essence. You shouldn't have let it in, it whispered, the voice like the rustle of autumn leaves, tainted with an electric undercurrent of malice. My heart lurched. "Who are you?" I gasped, backing toward the door, feeling its frame pressing against me like a prison. "Your choice opens doors you cannot close," the figure lingered, head tilting slightly, as if studying me. Its smile cracked open like a wound, revealing teeth too sharp, too white for a rotting face. "Is hungry, you know. Always hungry." As if on cue, the walls shuddered, and a deep rumble echoed through the building, as if the very structure was alive, groaning in agony. I glanced toward the hallway where I had heard the violent sound moments before. Seemed longer now, darker, swallowing the light. With each heartbeat, the air thickened, wrapping around me like damp cloth. The entity danced gracefully toward me, moving in a way that made my skin crawl, an unnatural sway that defied the constraints of humanity. "You think you're safe, don't you?" It breathed, and I could feel its rancid breath bathe my face, drawing me into its sickly warmth that I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to block out the grotesque sight. Instantly, the screams returned, thousands of voices overlapping, crying out, begging for release, for mercy. The sound wrapped around me, a chilling echo that reverberated in my bones. My body shook uncontrollably. I couldn't live through listening to them. In desperation, I forced myself to confront it. I opened my eyes, fists clenched. "What do you want from me?" I screamed, the words tearing from my throat. The figure chuckled, a sound that slithered through the air, seeping into my very soul. "You called us," it said, voice rumbling like distant thunder. "You always wanted to know. Now you will learn." Suddenly, the walls began to pulse with life, shadows throbbing like a heartbeat. I stumbled back, slamming against the door I needed to escape, yet rushing forward felt like an invitation to plunge deeper into the abyss. Without warning, the figure lunged, its claws outstretched, hell-bent on claiming me. Time slowed as I realized my fate loomed just inches away. Then I felt it, icy tendrils creeping around my ankle, pulling me down. My scream fell silent, choked out by fear as I wrestled against the unseen force dragging me back. It was no longer just a voice calling for help. I was the one who needed it. The door slammed shut behind me. The last thing I saw before total darkness enveloped me was the figure hovering above, its mouth stretching into an abhorrent grin, eyes gleaming with insatiable hunger, and then silence. My consciousness flickered in and out, grappling with the fog that surrounded me. When the darkness finally receded into an unsettling haze, I found myself sprawled on the cold, unforgiving floor of an unfamiliar room, dampness seeping through my clothes. The air hung heavy with the scent of decay and despair, a fetid reminder of horrors that pulsed just beneath the surface. Panic clawed at my throat, forcing me to sit up, my heart pounding a chaotic rhythm. The dull throb in my head echoed the horrors I had just witnessed. Where had that figure gone? Had it dragged me into this realm of shadows? Or was I merely hallucinating? My mind raced as I scanned the room, splattered with grotesque paintings in colors that should never have existed. Each canvas showed scenes of torment and chaos, not an artist's imagination but a portal into the twisted nature of a reality once hidden. I forced myself to stand, trembling from head to toe, and stumbled toward the flickering light spilling from a cracked door at the far end. The shadows danced as if alive, battling against the dim glow, revealing shapes that twisted and writhed at the edges of my vision. A sinking feeling settled deep in my stomach. Stepping closer felt like walking into a mouth about to swallow me whole as I reached for the doorknob. A chill swept through the air, sending a wave of dread surging down my spine. The voices returned, no longer separate but a symphony of lunacy, their echoes surrounding me, pressing in with laughter tinged with despair and malice. "Let us out," they shrieked in a dissonant chorus, a cacophony that churned my stomach. "Help us!" I recoiled, wrapping my arms around myself as if to ward off the invisible claws scratching at my sanity. The words twisted in my mind, mingling with a deep-rooted terror, the realization that those cries were the voices of the damned, souls trapped in eternal suffering. "Get out," I muttered, the desperate plea giving me the strength to turn and sprint toward the only other exit, an arched stone doorway nestled ominously in the corner. With each step, the atmosphere grew increasingly oppressive. The walls closed in, the shadows lengthening, reaching for me with a yearning that felt palpable. I reached the doorway and hesitated, heart pounding in my ears. A dark corridor stretched out before me, damp and echoing with something akin to laughter, the walls pulsing as if breathing. With no time to linger, I dashed through the opening, the chilling air wrapping around my limbs like a too-tight corset. The flooring beneath my feet shifted, slick with unknown substances that made me slip and falter. I stumbled forward, every nerve in my body screaming for me to stop, to turn back, yet some primal instinct drove me deeper into the murky depths. Suddenly, I skidded to a halt as I reached a chamber illuminated by a pale, unnatural glow. The specter of an old woman sat hunched in the center, her gnarled hands twisting a wretched piece of fabric, a tattered doll that seemed too lifelike, even in decay. Her eyes, sunken and empty, locked onto mine, sending a jolt of dread through my core. "Help them," she rasped, her voice layered with anguish and the weight of loss. "They're trapped like me." "Who? What do you mean?" I stumbled back, overwhelmed by the sheer horror of her presence. Her cracked lips stretched into a thin smile. "The ones you heard calling for your help. The ones you have awakened." A shudder ran through my spine as her words seeped into the marrow of my bones. My instincts screamed that I was being lured into something ancient and evil. But before I could retreat, the shadows at the edge of the room coalesced into forms, faces materializing with anguished expressions, mouths screaming silently for release. "Join us," they whispered, beckoning me closer. "Come play." Trapped by the weight of their sorrow, I felt the pull of their despair. My breath quickened, and I backed away, but the room was shifting, closing in, the light flickering and sputtering as if uncertain of its own strength. The walls began to moan, and the once quiet whispers transformed into frenzied clamoring. The fabric of reality frayed at the edges that I in an act of sheer instinct. I turned and bolted toward the doorway, but darkness enveloped me as soon as I crossed the threshold. Panic clawed at my throat, urging me to escape, to leave this nightmarish realm behind. Yet in the depths of that indomitable blackness, laughter rose, a haunting chorus of malice and mirth. 5, 4, 3 they chanted, the countdown pulsating through the air like a drumbeat of doom. And then an earth-shattering realization hit me. The shadows weren't just calling for help. They were counting down the seconds until they claimed me. Just as I reached for the light, a voice cut through the chaos, sharp and clear. "Time us up." A pair of icy hands gripped my shoulders from behind. The darkness consumed all hope as I turned to meet the hollow gaze of my own reflection staring back at me, twisting into a grotesque smile, and then silence. When the silence settled, it was suffocating. An oppressive shroud wrapped around me with a weight that felt intent on crushing every breath from my lungs. I stood in the same spot, each heartbeat echoing in the void as if the world beyond had ceased to exist. My reflection, the grotesque version, smirked back, sinister and unwavering in its solidity. It was a mirror image, yet there was something alive lurking in the depths of its shadowy visage, something with intentions that curled like smoke in the air. Suddenly, the air shifted. A cold whisper brushed against my ear, too faint to comprehend but thick with malice. "You've given us life," it hissed, resonating through my bones, chilling me to the core. I felt an urge so primal, so insidious, that it nearly stole my will to fight back, a yearning to surrender, to join the laughter, to be one with the darkness. But with a surge of clarity, I broke free from the grip of that terrible mirage and stumbled backward. The corridor's walls closed in, pressing against me, and I barely managed to maintain my footing. I darted away, the burden of their anticipation now a ghostly hand at my throat, dragging me toward the echoes of that malevolent laughter. Desperate to escape the mounting dread behind me, I fled deeper into the shadows. I was enveloped in a total darkness, punctuated only by those sporadic gleams of unholy light flickering out like dying stars. They led me through winding passages, each turn revealing more grotesque images festooned upon the walls' distorted faces, limbs twisted in despair, gaping mouths caught in perpetual screams. Those beings had once been human, their spirits indelibly shackled to this forsaken place. The sounds of tortured breaths intensified, rising to a fevered pitch as I stumbled into another room, vast and echoing. At its center was a pit, an abyss spiraling down into the very bowels of some unfathomable entity. The edges slick with what appeared to be remnants of those who had fallen into its depths. The stench overwhelmed me, a rancid mix of rot and desperation that clawed at the back of my throat. I shrank back, feeling the edge of the pit beckoning, hushed whispers wafting up like vapor from beneath. "Join us," they crooned, soft and inviting, the promises curling around my reason like smoke. I teetered on the precipice, alcohol-sweet chaos battling against the instinct of self-preservation. Before I could regain my bearings, a figure emerged from the shadows, the twisted old woman, her face ashen and hollowed, gliding toward me with a spectral grace. "You are chosen," she murmured, her voice laced with an unsettling calmness, the tattered doll still possessed in her hands, its glassy eyes searching mine. "Chosen for what?" I gasped, terror twisting my features. "To open the door," she whispered, each word laden with the weight of inevitability. "To bring them into the light." A cold realization swept over me, the pieces of a dreadful puzzle aligning. "No, I want tea," cried, horrified. "I can't let them out." The shadows shifted at the pit's edge, faces emerging from the dark void, lost souls reaching out with clawed fingers, their anguished cries mingling with the old woman's raspy breath. "It is already done," she said, and the edges of her mouth curled into a smile too wide, too hungry. The specter raised the tattered doll in prayer, and a crackle of energy pulsed through the air, vibrating the very core of my being as the glow from the pit brightened. A surge of chaos erupted, wails of sorrow and longing escaped into the world, carrying with them the weight of centuries. The atmosphere thickened, a tangible force pressing against my skin, willing me to give in. Suddenly, lights flickered above, a flood of blinding brilliance illuminating the chamber as I stumbled, heart racing. In a panicked whirl, I tore my eyes from the abyss just in time to witness the ghastly forms spilling forth like shadows, given flesh, no longer drifting merely in the depths of their game but carving their way into the world of the living. The air charged with malevolence, their laughter now hauntingly infectious, as if the very essence of their torment sought new vessels to invade. With my heart pounding furiously, I took a step back, the old woman's eyes locking onto me once more, her grin stretching impossibly wider. "You must choose," she rasped. "Will you join them or remain here forever?" Before I could fathom my choices, the corrupted tide surged forward. The doorway I had entered through groaned with the sounds of anguish, and in that awful moment, everything shattered. "Time to play," they whispered in unison, and I had nowhere left to run. The floor beneath my feet unhinged, swirling into the abyss as the spectral figures reached for me, their grasp icy and insatiable. I clenched my eyes shut, feeling the pull of darkness devour the light, promising me escape if only I would let go. "Help us," they pleaded, their voices rising into a crescendo in my mind, my heart unraveling under the weight of their desperate cries, echoing a truth that chilled me to my very soul. With one final push to escape, I opened my eyes and screamed. But the world around me had changed, the cruel laughter now an echo against nothingness. I was falling, consumed by the darkness, yet I couldn't shake the nagging sensation that something had followed me as I plummeted into the void. A single thought burned bright. This wasn't the end. The darkness enveloped me completely, an inky shroud blocking out all light and sound. I felt weightless, suspended in a nightmarish void where time held no meaning. A cold shimmer danced over my skin, a ghostly presence brushing against me, whispering secrets I couldn't decipher. My heart raced, racing to match the panic spiraling through my mind. It felt like I was lost in an ocean of despair, no reprieve in sight. Then, as if summoned by my fear, a sliver of light sputtered into existence, flickering like a dying flame. I squinted against its brilliance, a shimmering outline forming just beyond the edge. Shadows stretched towards it, writhing and darkening, throbbing with life beneath a veil of darkness, calling to me with a hypnotic tremor. Just as I reached for the growing light, it snapped away, leaving me gasping in the void. The air thickened, and I could taste the salt of my terror on my tongue. There, just at the edge of my vision, A soft hum began to resonate. It pulsed in the stillness, vibrating through the air with an unsettling insistence. My instincts screamed for me to retreat, but every fiber of my being was drawn to it, an intoxicating lure that ignited a primal instinct to seek. Before I could collect my thoughts, that soft hum transformed, twisting into a melodic chant, a symphony of voices blending together, weaving an unsettling tapestry of desire and despair. Sweat trickling down my spine, I strained to make sense of the words, but they slithered just out of reach, slipping through the cracks of my comprehension like grains of sand. Suddenly, the void shifted, its texture changing like molten glass, revealing a scene that made my skin crawl. It wasn't simply darkness. I had fallen into it was a dimension where nightmares took corporeal form. The air hummed with the energy of the damned. I watched in horror as figures emerged, formless shapes that lacked definition yet pulsed with an unsettling vitality. They coiled around one another, sprawling into grotesque formations, their whispers intertwining with the melody that had enveloped me. I backed up instinctively, panic flooding my veins. The last flicker of light revealed the sides of my surroundings, a gilded framework of unfathomable designs etched into the very fabric of the darkness. Each symbol writhed and crumbled away, leaving only a chill in the air, a promise of what was to come, what came before. It was a language I couldn't decipher, yet my heart knew its meaning. Gaping mouths opened upon the figures, their moaning lullabies resonating deeper, as if reaching into my soul. Find the key, they sang, their voices mingling with the cold grasp of confusion. But the key to what? Each word felt like a scab torn from a wound, exposing raw horrors that recoiled against reason. The terror of the unknown held me frozen, a reluctant witness to the unfolding chaos. The darkness surged forward suddenly, a ravenous beast intent on devouring everything in its path. I felt it breathe, a hot, rancid wind washing over me as the chants rose to a fever pitch. I stumbled, catching myself against the uneven ground, my nails digging into the cool surface. Before I could push back against the tide, the grotesque figures lunged closer, faces warped in an ecstatic frenzy, mouths agape in a ghastly parody of laughter. "Help us," they cried, and just as quickly, their voices twisted into a cacophony of screams. I clamped my hands over my ears, but nothing could drown out their madness. The symphony grew louder, more dissonant, thrumming against my skull as if trying to break me from the inside out. I could see now, fluttering veils of corrupted light flickering between them, casting eerie reflections of long-forgotten souls within their forms. Instinctively, I turned, searching for an escape, but the void had reshaped itself around me, closing in tighter than before. The tendrils of darkness pulsed rhythmically, closing off my path, a perverse heartbeat syncing with my own. I was trapped in a living entity, insatiable and hungry, begging to consume. I in a paroxysm of futility. I shouted, "Get away from me!" Yet the shadows thickened, hovering closer, their malicious energy crackling in the air like an unseen flame hungry for flesh. The laughter intensified, echoing disproportionately in the expanse, casting flickering shadows that danced akin to marionettes, tugged by invisible strings. Then, in a moment of sheer disbelief, I felt one of the shadows draw near, its presence like a wave crashing over me. Breathless and real, it locked gazes with me. Its eyes, twin orbs of obsidian, housed nothing but a hollow flame. That I held a promise, an unspoken covenant offering eternal knowledge, if I only forsook my fragile humanity. "All you must do is choose," it whispered, gravelly yet dulcet, light refracting off the edges of its figure. I could still hear the echoes of those pleading souls, insisting I grant them release. Yet the offer stirred another yearning within me, a suppressing desire for knowledge, for power over something so utterly beyond my grasp. As I warred against the choices before me, the lives of the cursed offered for my salvation or the chance to unlock the secrets of the cosmos, there was an undeniable truth lurking just beyond my awareness. Choose or be consumed. It breathed into my mind, and in that moment of agonizing indecision, the shadows recoiled, swirling into a roaring storm. The ground trembled beneath my feet, and in an instant, the very fabric of the void began to unravel. The golden etchings faded away, Replaced with an infinite stretch of swirling clouds, the gateway to unfathomable horrors opened wide, and I stood on the precipice, faced with the staggering choice amidst the cacophony of souls, as terror spread through me like wildfire. The onslaught of shadow surged forward as I felt the abyss yawn beneath me, hunger emanating from all corners, and just as I made my decision, the world blinked out of existence. I gasped, limbs trembling, as the darkness faded into blinding white light. Just as suddenly quelling the storm of shadows, the incandescent glow enveloped me, consuming the emptiness that had swallowed me whole. My heart pounded in my chest like a trapped creature desperate for freedom. But the glow flickered, and I was thrust back not into the comforting abyss, but into a scene that seethed with dread. I blinked against the brightness, finding myself precariously standing at the entrance of an ancient cathedral, its crumbling stones whispering stories of once sacred rituals. The air was thick with unnatural quiet, the silence almost a sentient being that pressed against me as I stepped forward. The walls loomed around me, covered in faded frescoes depicting angels battling monstrous entities. Their eyes appeared to follow me, a cacophony of grief and warning etched into each canvas. Muffled cries resonated beneath my feet, a chorus of lost souls echoing within the bones of the structure. I could feel their despair slithering up my legs, wrapping around my mind like creeping vines. Squeezing tighter with each step I took into the darkened nave, a chill skittered through the air, separating the strands of hair on my neck. Shadows pooled in the corners, thick and liquid, swirling like vapors of unending nightmares. They beckoned with deceptive allure, promising freedom from burdens too heavy to bear. Every breath became a battle as the presence around me intensified, suffocating me with its unholy pressure. That I wandered deeper, drawn toward the pulpit adorned with dust and cobwebs, a forgotten throne, an echo of authority long abandoned. As I approached, a sudden rending noise shattered the silence. The solemn air began to quake, and I froze as cracks splintered through the floor like ribs breaking beneath a confined chest. Ah, the seeker returns. A solemn voice resonated from within the shadows. A figure emerged, limbs elongated and swathed in flowing black, facial features indistinguishable behind the obscuring veil. It stepped into a feeble beam of light, illuminating the pale skin, devoid of warmth or life. You tread where many have faltered, yet your heart remains indecisive. My breath hitched, the weight of its gaze piercing through my defenses. What do you seek? It inquired, tilting its head slightly. The words slithered into my mind, and an unsettling sensation coiled in my gut. Knowledge? Power? Or simply to feel alive amidst the void? I don't know, I stammered, the sheer magnitude of my uncertainties unraveling the shreds of courage I had gathered. The suffocating shadows inched closer, hungry for my fragility, echoing the chants of the souls I had heard before. What if I told you the true key lies within this place? The entity stretched an arm, brittle fingers brushing against the weathered altar. The moment it made contact, the cathedral erupted with echoes, the vaulted ceiling groaned, timeless stones rumbled, and the earth wailed with the agony of ancient memories clawing to the surface. The frescoes began to whiz and dance, the scenes flickering in and out. Angels became demons, their winged forms morphing into wretched silhouettes that screamed through fractured mouths. I staggered back, caught in the spiral of tumult that threatened to pull me under. The air thickened, saturating with an oppression that threatened to crack my sanity. Open your eyes. You can't remain blinded to the truth. The figure's voice grew fierce, resonating against the chaotic juncture of the cathedral. Those who wish for eternity must first embrace the darkness. I turned on my heels, desperate to escape the far-reaching tendrils of horror that clawed at my ankles. Yet every stride deeper into the chaos revealed an undeniable truth. I was not alone. I could feel them ghostly hands reaching from the cracks in the stones, fingers trailing along my skin, leaving trails of icy dread. In a panic, I stumbled upon a mirror, its cracked surface reflecting shards of unrealized desires mingled with fragments of my torment. A twisted visage gazed back, a creature writhing within a body once my own, its eyes pools of dark chaos promising enlightenment should I relinquish my essence. Join us, it whispered tenderly, twisting my heart in a vice of curiosity and fear. Open the door and let the shadows in. Embrace what lies beyond the veil. The thrumming of the cathedral intensified, pulses of darkness erupting into the mirrorless frame, an abyss reaching toward me with relentless longing. Something shifted beneath my feet, a whirlpool of radiant shadows drawn from the mirror, beckoning me with promises of secrets untold, imbued with the intoxicating taste of the forbidden. I felt the doorway to my very soul wane, threatening to open as I teetered on the brink. With every ounce of will I clung to the last threads of my humanity, sweat dripping down my face. But as I faced the twisted reflection of what I might become, a chilling realization pierced through the haze of revelation. The choice was not simply mine to make, and just as my heart pulled toward the shadows, desperate for answers, the mirror shattered, a million shards spiraling violently into the air, and darkness poured through in a torrent, a howling maelstrom that swept me into the depths of oblivion, lost to the cries anticipating my surrender. I end that cacophonous moment. Just as the last piece fell away from grip, a chilling truth dawned. I had become the key. The void swallowed me whole, plunging me into a realm of absolute darkness where time ceased to exist. The air was thick with an acrid smell of decay, a rancid reminder of all that had been abandoned. Instead of sinking into the soft embrace of the eternal nothingness, I felt a pull, as though the shadows had teeth and they were gnashing them against my very essence. Suddenly, I was thrown into a different space, an endless corridor stretching before me, walls clinging to life by mere threads, peeling paint revealing grotesque faces that twisted in silent screams. Each step echoed not just through the oppressive corridor, but in my mind, reverberating with the laughter of the tormented. They were here. They had always been here, waiting, watching. Why do you resist? A voice slithered through the gloom, soft yet loud enough to call the spirits entwined in my existence. I turned sharply, scanning the darkness for the origin. This path offers everything you seek, yet your feet stumble in rebellion. Show yourself, I shouted, though my voice wavered, lost amid the cacophony of whispers echoing from the walls. I don't want this. Yet it didn't matter. I had already entered their realm, a world where the rules bent like shadows stretching at dusk. A sudden gust of wind caressed my face, carrying with it a chorus of voices, each demanding my attention, beseeching me to accept what had been offered, what I had been offered. The walls warped, revealing things too grotesque to lay eyes upon. Gouts of blood-spattered shadows danced against the surfaces, twisting into shapes of memory. Phantom limbs, outstretched hands from ages long past, yearning for resurrection. A memory I wished could remain dormant surged forth, a flash of my mother's face, eyes wide with terror as she whispered a tale of caution. Never wander into the shadows, my dear. They hunger for more than you'll ever understand. Tears pricked at the corners of my eyes as a chill slithered down my back, the realization that I was tethered to this place, that my mother's warning had fallen upon deaf ears. Then, from the heart of the corridor, a figure emerged, hunched and grotesque, its limbs twisted like old roots in the moonlight, veins pulsing with a dark luminescence. It held itself precariously, as if each movement could shatter the illusion. It bore the face of my mother, a cruel mockery, the smile stretched unnaturally into a rictus that seemed not to belong. Why did you come, my dear? It crooned, the familiarity laced with malice. You were meant to forget, to leave the darkness behind. Yet here you are, still seeking the warmth of a truth that was never yours to hold. No, no, you're not her. You're not real. My voice trembled, but I could hear the undercurrent of doubt creeping through. The shadows grew restless, swirling in anticipation. Reality is but a thin veil, child, the creature murmured, stepping closer, the floor trembling beneath its weight. Its fingers brushed against the walls, bringing forth the echoes of those I had dreaded. The faces twisted in anguish morphed into my own, each match a memory I had fought to suppress. Embrace the truth, for it is a gift bestowed upon those brave enough to glimpse behind the shroud of the mundane. Inexplicable dread surged within me as they drew closer. As their whispers became audible, I caught fragments of countless lives, fragments of screams interspersed with laughter, promises of eternity woven with threads of despair that gripped me like hands ensnaring my sanity. Suddenly, The ground cracked open beneath me, revealing a dark chasm that yawned like a mouth hungry for my soul. Shapes began clawing from the void, twisted silhouettes bathed in an oily sheen, eyes burning like fireflies in the night longing for human warmth. "Join us," they chorused in unison, a painful harmony that raked through my thoughts, compelling me towards the abyss, a promise of unfathomable understanding at the cost of everything I ever was. With a final ounce of defiance, I turned back to the twisted figure staring, waiting for my answer. "I don't want this. I don't want your truth. Then accept the eternal night," it whispered, ghostly fingers coiling around my throat, the air heavy with the weight of eras lost and souls devoured. "You cannot escape what you are, my dear. You are bound to this darkness now, destined to join the endless cycle of despair." Just as the pull from the chasm intensified, something in the distance glimmered, a light so pure and piercing that it cut through the despair like a blade through flesh. With it came the memories of what I once held dear, whispering jewels of determination within the clutches of terror. But there, beneath the light, shadows lurked, restless in their vigil. Then, as I braced to leap toward the beacon of hope, the wretched laughter of the entity and the cries from the chasm morphed into a single note, a cacophony resonating in grotesque harmony that promised not just danger, but a revelation. And in that moment, just as I turned to escape my fate, the walls of the corridor trembled violently, shattering into innumerable shards, and the dark whispers surged forward, a wave of despair crashing down upon me as I plunged toward the flickering light, uncertain of the price I would have to pay for my freedom. The moment I plunged toward the flickering light, I felt the air around me shift, the temperature dropping precipitously as the shadows surged hungrily behind me. I could hear their wails intertwining into a frenzied symphony of rage and despair, echoing as I fell through the jagged remnants of reality. The light grew closer, illuminating the tattered remnants of the corridor, and as I finally collided with its warmth, it enveloped me like a long-lost embrace. But nothing felt right. The light, although brilliant, pulsed like a heartbeat, alive, yet unsettling. It radiated a warmth that whispered secrets, caressing my skin like a long-forgotten memory, but beneath it lay an unsettling chill that clawed at the edges of my consciousness. I staggered to my feet in a landscape like no other, an ethereal twilight where shadows danced gently with the luminescent glow surrounding me. Stalactites of light hung from a dark sky, dripping a gentle luminescence that illuminated the space, revealing what appeared to be a vast expanse of empty, undulating terrain. The air thrummed vibrantly, resonating with a pulse I could feel deep within my bones. But solitude shattered my fragile, newfound hope almost immediately. From beyond the shimmering veil, silhouettes emerged, pale figures, some adorned with disjointed limbs, others with eyes that glowed like coals ignited by the fire of 1,000 souls. They hovered just out of reach, whispering words of an unrecognizable language, each syllable a shiver running down my spine. Suddenly, a wave of darkness washed over the terrain, casting everything into shadow as a monstrous growl echoed from the depths of the void behind me. I spun around to see the horror of the figures I had left behind manifesting at the chasm's edge, their faces contorting in rage and despair, stretching towards me like a plague. "Stay with us," they shrieked, their voices merging into an agonizing lament that threatened to pierce my very soul. "You cannot escape." I felt my heart racing, echoing like the thundering drum of war. The beings in this twilight realm began to close in around me, their mouths moving in rhythmic precision, the patterns enticing yet malicious. I could sense a hunger in their wide, unblinking eyes. Each laugh that emanated from the dark figures behind me egged them on, feeding the tree of terror rooted deep in the shadows. With each anguished scream, the ground beneath me began to tremble as fissures of darkness cracked open further, whispering promises of knowledge as the luminous beings danced like marionettes around their own grotesque theater. "Embrace the truth," they sang in soft cadences, "we know what lies beyond." Just then, through the din of insanity, a figure broke from the crowd, weaving in between the monstrous forms of my past. The familiar face of my mother, or at least the twisted reflection of her I had fought against, emerged from the fray, her eyes glistening like flooded wells of agony. "Do you see them, my dear?" she sang, her voice threading through the cacophony like a silver needle through tattered cloth. Accept what lies ahead. See beyond the veil of reality you cling to. No, I cried, backing away, the ground trembling beneath me as if it awaited my final decision. The light behind me flickered ominously, sending shadows spiraling into chaos. I refuse to play your games. You're not real. Above the roar of laughter and desperation, another unsettling noise erupted, a chorus of chattering, like a million tiny teeth grinding against each other, echoing from the chasms that threatened to consume me. The very sky twisted and darkened, the shards of light splintering into a piercing darkness that felt alive, filled with eyes, watching, judging. Then I stumbled, falling backward into the darkness as the sound crescendoed into a ghastly harmony that promised both salvation and horror. I found myself on the edge of the abyss, scrambling to escape the suffocating grip of the shadows, wrestling to find my way in a nightmare that expanded infinitely before me. And then, as I gazed into the limitless void, where countless souls writhed and twisted in torment, something began to emerge, a terrible, grand shape, grotesquely colossal, rising from the depths like a horrid deity of despair. It towered beyond comprehension, its malevolent eyes locking onto mine, a grin spreading across its ghastly visage, a promise, a curse, an invitation, and in that moment, rife with terror, I realized that the heart of the darkness thrummed not just with despair but with an insatiable urge to consume everything I held dear. I felt my sanity beginning to splinter at the edges like cracked glass, the choice laid bare before me. To plunge into the unknown with those who yearned for my downfall, or to embrace the horrifying truth and join their eternal lament of darkness. The shadows shrieked triumphantly as I stood frozen, the monstrous figure looming closer, hands extending toward me, and with a final echoing invitation that shattered my resolve, it whispered, "Join us and discover who you truly are." The darkness roared at me, a tangible beast eager to swallow all that I was. The ground shuddered beneath my feet as I stood teetering on the brink of madness, the choice bearing down on me like an executioner's axe. The faces of the condemned swirled in a maelstrom of despair around me, their ghostly cries intertwining with the laughter that echoed from the abyss, merging into a discordant symphony of ruin. Suddenly, the figure gliding above, a mockery of humanity, stretched one of its grotesque limbs towards me, the fingers extending like a shadowy web ensnaring my anxiety. I felt the air thicken, each breath a painful reminder of the life I had fought to hold on to. "No!" I screamed, shaking my head violently as if trying to rattle the fear loose. I want tea. The ancient memories of love and laughter surged within me, trying to drown out the cry of the void. Yet, the shadows only pressed harder against my resolve, urging me to yield, to succumb, and then, out of the corners of my precarious vision, an unsettling sight began to materialize, a multitude of mirrored surfaces writhing like serpents in the dark. Their reflections were distorted, sadistic loops of moments I did not want to recall, each one replaying snippets of bliss intermingled with gnawing agony, my childhood laughter dashed by heartbreak, stolen joys consumed by lingering fears, and faces of lost love tangled in anguish, all reflected back at me. "Look closer." The malevolent form beckoned, its voice unfurling like smoke, drawing me in. "This is your past and your future." The cruel gleam in its eyes promised visions far worse than the cruelty of the shadows surrounding me. Each reflection seemed to pulse with a sinister awareness, staring back with hungry curiosity. Among the cacophony of laughter, soft whispers drifted toward me. They beckoned me with sweet promises, offering secrets shrouded in the darkness. "You can know. You can understand. Join us and we shall show you." Desperation clawed at my sanity, each flickering light becoming a blinding beacon I longed for. I fought back against their call, the horror of their reality igniting a vehemence I didn't know existed within me. "You won, win," I shrieked, feeling shards of laughter sink into the marrow of my bones. The figure paused, its grin expanding. "Oh, but we have won. You've already slipped into our grasp. You simply need to give in." And with that, the ground beneath me began to shift violently, the shadows coalescing into whirlpools that threatened to pull me into their suffocating embrace. I leaned against nothingness, grasping at fading memories, a father's gentle hand, a mother's soft lullabies, a friend's unwavering support, and I felt a momentary flicker of strength burst within me. Sprinting desperately towards the flickering warmth of the light that had drawn me so initially, I threw myself at it, a comet of hope speeding toward its core. But as I neared, the light flickered and dimmed, choking, winking out as my fingers grazed its surface. The warmth turned ice-cold, splintering into sharp shards that cut into my essence. "No," I gasped, stumbling back, and in that instant, the voices around me intensified, compounding into a thunderous cacophony. "You cannot leave. You belong to the shadows now." The landscape warped, the shimmering terrain collapsing in on itself, twisting into an infinite void where nightmares danced and twirled in exultation. Frantic, I whirled around, searching for some semblance of escape, but the silhouettes of my past emerged from every angle, grotesquely warped and eerily joyous, and then, I caught sight of something amidst the swirling mass, a familiar face, a reflection of myself clad in sorrow yet exuding an eerie allure. It beckoned, its expression twisted into an unspeakable grin that promised warmth, belonging, and knowledge shimmering just beyond the veil of dreams. "Come to me," it rasped, its voice a chilling echo of my own. "We're the same, you and I. Together we will transcend." As I hesitated, petrified by the prospect of what it meant to surrender, a piercing shriek erupted around me, the sounds of countless souls lamenting their fates reverberating through the air. I felt the shadows rushing in, the darkness breaking upon me like a tempest as I teetered precariously at the cusp of insanity and clarity. But it was then the figure of an angel emerged, ethereal and radiant, fighting through the shadows to reach me, radiating promise and hope. "Fight!" it cried, a voice filled with painful determination. "Do not give in." My world hung suspended, a pendulum swinging dangerously between despair and salvation, as the awful truth repulsively churned within me. Would I lose myself to the dark echoes of my own nightmares, or would I rise to the occasion, defying the very essence of what sought to consume me? Then, in that breathless moment, the poised battle between light and dark crescendoed into an agonizing climax. Just as my resolve surged anew, the ground beneath me gave way entirely, plunging into an even deeper darkness. I fell, screaming into the void, my cries echoing back to mock me as the cold fingers of despair wrapped around my heart, a void that held more than mere nothingness, where slumbering horrors awakened, waiting hungrily for me to join their ranks. And in the darkness below, I heard it, a deafening silence, as if the world had collectively exhaled in anticipation. And then, with insufferable finality, the whispers began anew. "Join us and embrace your true nature." When I awoke, I was lying on a hard wooden floor, bathed in a flickering fluorescent light that hummed with an unsettling, almost sinister energy. Confusion clouded my thoughts as I pushed myself up, memories of the darkness still clawing at the edges of my mind. But something was wrong, far too wrong. As I stood, the metallic tang of blood mixed with the scent of damp earth filled my nostrils, invoking a visceral dread that curled around my stomach. Around me, barren walls echoed with moans that resonated through the air like a siren's call, and the ground hummed beneath my feet, each vibration resonating within my core. I tore my eyes from the grotesquely peeling wallpaper images of distorted faces twisted in agony grinned back at me, their eyes filled with an unspeakable void. I was not alone. The memory surged, reminding me I was still under their gaze. I could feel the weight of their hunger pressing against my back. "Help us," the whispers came, swirling around me, luring me further into their grasp, each word seductive yet terrifying. I staggered away from the words, drawing my fingers across the rough walls, seeking guidance from something familiar, anything to hold onto a lifeline as I pressed deeper into this nightmarish domain. The voices escalated, rising to a frantic crescendo, blending into a dissonant chant. I realized with horror that familiar faces floated through the shadows, their mouths twisted into silent pleas for liberation, their eyes pools of despair. I knew them all. Friends, family, people I had loved and lost. They hovered behind veils of blackness, fingers extended, pleading for my help. "What have I awoken?" I muttered, my voice hanging in the air like a fragile thread. Each tortured face reflected my deepest regrets. In that moment, Clarity sliced through the haze. I had been the key that unlocked this infernal prison. The shadows clung close, emboldened by my admission. A collective rush of ecstatic anticipation enveloping me. The acrid scent of decay enveloped me, pulling me into their despair. I took a step back, battling the haze of surrender mixing with dread. "No, you can't have me," I shouted, but my resolve was met with raucous laughter, malicious yet delightfully inviting, echoing along the corridor that continued to stretch infinitely before me. The shadows surged forward, blurring the line between terror and desire. And then I saw it. A door standing in the distance, an antique wooden structure cracked and splintered, surrounded by an ethereal glow that beckoned me. Could it be the way out? Or was it yet another trap? As I approached, doubts gnawed at me, yet the faces behind me grew quieter, as if the door held some secret that would shatter their curse. Compelled by that sliver of hope, I grasped the cold handle. The moment I turned it, I was thrust into a blinding light so brilliant it stung my eyes. I screeched, shielded my face, and stumbled forward, surrendering to the warmth that enveloped me. But as the light faded and my surroundings settled, I found myself not in a sanctuary but in a desolate room, one I recognized all too well, the inside of my own home. But it had changed. Things lay strewn about, remnants of panic painted across the walls. Murmurs filled the air, muffled yet familiar. Desperation surged within me as the shadows grew longer, creeping across the room like creeping vines enveloping my heart. "What is this?" I gasped, panic echoing in the confines of my mind. The muffled cries swelled around me as I turned, desperately seeking out the source. That S when I saw it, the mirror hanging crooked on the wall, a beautifully ornate structure that now pulsated with an unnatural light. Within its depths, I could see fleeting images, moments suspended in time. Laughter, tears, happiness tainted with sorrow. They danced before me, laughing and crying, pulling me in closer. I breathed deeply, recognizing it all, those I had lost, those I loved. And then darkness coiled within the reflection, twisted forms rising like smoke from the depths of hidden nightmares, their eyes glimmering with hungry intent. The haunting visage of the woman emerged once more, her lips curled into that sinister smile that had haunted my dreams. "You thought you could leave, didn't you? But you're still here, in our realm," she chuckled, voice dripping with malice. Panic gripped me, and I reached desperately for the mirror, wanting to shatter the shape of the shadows. "Get out!" I screamed, yet they surged forward, cold tendrils reaching toward me. Hesitation coursed through me as the truth clawed at the corners of my consciousness. This wasn't just another illusion, but my own mind becoming a battlefield of horror and confusion. As I slammed my hands against the glass, the reflection warped, revealing the truth. I was trapped in the twisted memories of a reality I could no longer escape. They weren't the shadows of lost souls. They were pieces of me, fragments of the wishes I had buried deep within. The sinister voices were not trying to lure me in. They were echoing parts of my spirit yearning for release, the darkness that clung to me, the regrets I had ignored, the fears I had suppressed. Suddenly, an icy terror gripped my heart. The understanding struck with brutal force. The door had only led me back to the beginning. My reflection cackled, the laughter blending into a churning tempest of voices, swirling together in a monstrous choir of my past that continued to hunger for acknowledgement. The realization crystallized as I screamed, "No, you win." Desperation surged as I fought back against the darkness, clenching my veins into tight knots. But the agony flooded me with every breath. I wanted to scream, to shred this reality apart piece by piece. The horror I had awakened harbored my very own darkness. The truth of sins I had buried laid hidden beneath layers of fear and regret. In that very moment, chaos swirled around me, illuminating those lost echoes of love and loss intertwined. "Embrace us," the voices pleaded. "You cannot run away from what lies within." They crescendoed, their once foreign cries morphing into a deafening roar, building upon the guilt I hoarded like a withered bouquet. In an impulsive surge of anger and grief, I grasped the mirror again, crashing it against the wall. The world shattered before me, breaking open into a luminescent expanse. The dark figures screamed, unfamiliar agony ripping through their forms as the darkness was split asunder, revealing a realm that wobbled like a dream. Yet in that fracturing, a flicker of light erupted, a realization surging within me. The darkness did not define me. I was not just an amalgamation of their terror. I was filled with the strength I had cast aside. Somehow, I felt the surge of every bond, of every love I had forged and lost, wrapping around me like a protective cloak. The light was resonance, a truth that rivaled the shadows. To embrace every fragment, every pain, and every moment of joy, the figures screamed. I whispered back, I won't lose myself. And just as the shadows threatened to return, I stepped through the shattered mirror and into the brilliant expanse beyond. It blinked into existence, a bright world whose beauty burned away the darkness. The cacophony of the damned faded into echoes. I stood naked in the glow, stripped of fear and sorrow, acknowledging my fears but not wholly consumed by them. But as I took my first step in this rebirth, a chill, familiar sensation crept through me. Whispers of the past beckoned from far off, sirens humming a melody that felt like home. In this new realm, the truth lingered behind, lurking a ghost of a memory poised to return. Lingering just within the edges of the glow, a single voice called out to me, "Come back, my dear." A cold dread wrapped itself around my heart, a realization echoing in the recesses of my mind. It wasn't over. As I turned, the sensation flowed through me like ice. Each whisper a reminder that the shadows did not cease to exist. They waited for me to join them once more. Painfully sweet, eternal, insatiable, and just as the realization took root, I understood every darkness has its own light, but no light exists without darkness.